Hi, I'm Kat Kalashian for Live and Invest Overseas, coming to you live from my home in Paris, France. And today, aptly, we are talking about moving to France. For many people, France is like the fairy tale land of romance, culinary excellence, delicious wine, beautiful architecture, and, thanks to all the movies with a love story that unfolds in Paris or some quaint little French town, many of us view France with rose-tinted glasses. However, I can tell you from experience that that ideal is not far off from the reality of living in one of the most visited countries in the world. I know at least it is for me. I've been living in Paris since 2018, and I previously lived here for 4 years prior, and it is absolutely my dream home. Of course, no place is absolutely perfect, and we will get to some of the cons of France living in a minute. But generally speaking, why should you consider moving to France if you're thinking about moving overseas or to Europe? Well, France has some of the world's best healthcare, as voted by the World Health Organization. It's got top quality infrastructure, rail networks, public transport within cities, highways are all great, etc. And it is what many people, as I said, regard as the best of Europe. It's that cafe culture, the romance, the art, history, fashion, culture, cuisine, wine, and, living in an open air museum, I think, is what a lot of people equate with living in France, which is pretty true. You've got sophisticated urban centers, quaint rural villages, peaceful countrysides, and the diversity of geography and climate here mean that there's a lifestyle option for pretty much anybody. When it comes to residency, the process is fairly straightforward. We do recommend you use a lawyer because otherwise it'll just be a lot of unnecessary headaches, but you can get residency here just by proving that you earn enough money per month. You'll provide the proof of income, and that's about all you have to do. As I mentioned, the healthcare is great, and all residents can access this healthcare regardless of nationality, and even over-the-counter and prescription drugs are much cheaper than they are back home. Plus, this is one of the easiest countries to access in Europe, with numerous direct flights from Paris to the US and Canada, and domestic airlines or Europe airlines that are very reasonably priced, many of them very low cost, plus the quality train services and connections that can get you all around France and even outside of France. So let's take a quick look at the pros, which I've kind of gone over already, but to summarize, the quality of life, the appreciation for life, the great healthcare. As I mentioned, France does offer some of the best healthcare in the world, and it's all very affordable, possibly even free. For retirees, the cost of this extraordinary healthcare is pretty much covered. Although it's a bit of a gray area, US pensioners are exempt from paying the social charges typically asked of residents for healthcare. And this is certainly true for anyone receiving a state pension. It's just in practice a little bit of a gray area for those with 401ks or IRAs. In practice, these people have never really been asked to pay, but this may not be the case forever. So something to keep in mind. The top quality food and wine, that's also very affordable. It acts as a great base for travel around the rest of Europe. You've got all of the history and art here, and a large, diverse country with mountains, coastlines, countryside, cities, and a very active hiking and biking culture, which a lot of people aren't really familiar with. When they think of France, they don't think of hiking, but that is a big part of what the French like to do on their holidays. However, as I said, no place is perfect. There are plenty of cons to living here too. The bureaucracy is absolutely out of this world. You will never believe the amount of red tape that you'll have to get through, the hoops you have to jump through to get anything done in France. Customer is not the king here, le roi. Customer service is not at all like it is in North America, generally speaking. You definitely have to play to a shop owner's wishes if you would like to get in. There is the cost of the social safety net. If you want to pay into the system, it can be a little bit expensive. However, I will talk about later how that doesn't apply to pensioners. Charm comes at the cost of convenience. So, cobblestone streets are very cute. Old buildings are very, charming, but they often don't have elevators. They often are poorly insulated. They have electrical systems or plumbing systems that go back decades. And so in everything you do in Europe, generally speaking, there is this charm factor. And then you realize, oh, it's all great until you're really looking to be efficient. And then the convenience factor pops its head up. There is a lot of social unrest. There are demonstrations all the time, strikes all the time. This is just par for the course here. And it's pretty traditional. People in France are pretty staid, formal, not overly kid-friendly, not incredibly innovative. They like things the way that they've always been. And that's how they'd like them to stay. A few things that you'll encounter for culture shocks. Absolutely, the number one thing is the work to live attitude. It's completely reversed mindset about productivity here as it is in the US. So here you really you only work as hard as you have to. Nobody is staying late at night. Nobody's working through lunch unless there's some specific reason they have to. People here don't equate themselves with their jobs or their careers. They like to enjoy all of the rest of the things that life has to offer. Definitely in France, quality comes over quantity. So somebody might, for example, pay 500 euros for a sweater, but they only have 4 sweaters in their closet. They don't have 20, from buying them at Target or wherever that you can get 20 at a time. As I mentioned, they are traditional, risk averse, not super innovative. There is definitely a mañana attitude here that most people are not familiar with. We'll call it the demain attitude, which is tomorrow in French. As I say, people here don't necessarily work overtime. So if the door is closing at 6 p.m., the door closes at 6 p.m., they aren't going to keep you around to make an extra sale that day. It's just not worth it. Things do get lost in translation, so it does behoove you to learn some French, but also understand that even if somebody speaks English, they might not necessarily understand the spirit of what you're saying, although they might understand the words. And English is not as commonly spoken as you might think, especially if you've only been a tourist in Paris, where, all of the service industry and many, many people speak English to a pretty high level. Outside of Paris, that's just not the case. You might encounter people who speak a bit of English or not. And these, especially outside the city, people don't take kindly to being spoken to in any other language. So it's definitely a good thing to learn some basics of French, if not really try and immerse yourself in a language program. And it's very difficult to break into the local community here. The way that the French interact with people is so different, the social interactions, than they are from the US or Canada. And so it can be very difficult to make local friends. On the plus side, there is a very active and large expat community here in France. So there's a quick pros and cons and a quick summary and introduction of why you might want to move to France. And if you are interested in moving to France, one of the best ways that you can do this is by joining us for our one-day Access France workshop. There is no better way to make your France dreams come true than to join us for our one-day France workshop next month. Discover all you need to know about expat life in all of France's top expat havens when you join us online for this streaming event. It's your opportunity to explore all the options of living in France and to connect with our team of in-country experts who can help you make the move with ease and confidence. Click the link on your screen to learn more. I will be hosting this event, and I look forward to seeing all of my good friends and colleagues here in France, as well as all of you online. So sign up to learn more. All right, let's get back to a little bit more about France. As the biggest country in Western Europe, France is hugely diverse and has something to offer just about anyone. Metropolitan capital, laid-back rustic living in the countryside, outdoor mountain life in the Alps or other mountains like the Pyrenees, glamorous beachside living and the Côte d'Azur, and much, much more in between all of those. Sun seekers will be most happy in the south, where there's plenty of sunshine year-round and temperatures are mild year-round. Those who prefer seasons or cooler temperatures will be very happy in the north. And France is steeped in a very rich history that goes back thousands of years, and it can be seen in the beautiful architecture, the charming traditions, the food culture, but also in archaeological sites. So don't expect everything to be recent history. There are plenty of Roman settlements, for example, and a lot of ancient history to discover here as well. And of course, France is absolutely famous for its vineyards, being home to some of the world's best wines. You can enjoy a glass of local wine just a few kilometers from where it was produced if you go on a wine tasting tour, of which there are hundreds, thousands probably. And when it's paired with the world-renowned gastronomy, it makes kind of the wine and cuisine are almost worth the move all by themselves. Plus the countless churches, cathedrals, the dozens of museums, and hundreds of galleries, universities, and classes that are offered in English as well that you could enroll in. This country really offers a culture vulture, a lifetime of fodder. You really can't get bored living here. But moving here does take a little bit of an adjustment to the slower pace of life. The French value quality time with family members or friends and sharing conversation over an espresso or a glass of wine any time of the day. There are vibrant expat communities in many parts of France, and they are very welcoming and make the transition much less daunting. The French do have a reputation for being unfriendly, but it's really just a stereotype. The cultural difference in how Americans and French approach social interactions is just so so vast that it can be hard to breach. But any effort made to speak the language will be appreciated and get you in the door, even if it's just a simple bonjour or merci. And don't expect small talk to work the same way here. French don't like small talk, so don't even try. France is not a budget destination, but it doesn't need to be as expensive as you might think. Living in the center of Paris, of course, is going to be the most expensive part of France, but in many of the neighborhoods, arrondissements, renting or buying an apartment is much cheaper. And once you get out of the capital into other cities and towns, the cost of property and day-to-day living drops dramatically. If you're looking for your idyllic cottage dream in the countryside, there will be plenty to choose from, and they're very affordable. However, taxes are high in France, which does add to the cost of living here, but you get some great healthcare and infrastructure for the taxes that you pay. Utilities and day-to-day living can be a bargain compared to the US or Canada. You'll be enjoying high quality, locally produced food, and eating out in restaurants is very affordable. The public transportation is efficient and reliable, but it isn't the cheapest in Europe, with pretty high train prices comparatively. All in all, though, the cost of living in France, it does balance out. It's not a cheap destination, but you can live a very high quality of life on a budget. You just need to know where to look. Join us next week for an introduction to some of France's top destinations. Happy trails.